In the past few months, two big stories rocked the media landscape. BuzzFeed going public and Donald Trump launching his media empire. Well, I'm going to cut to the chase right away, my friends. BuzzFeed ain't doing too well. The latest scoop is that BuzzFeed is limiting its hiring after a rough public debut. You can see BuzzFeed's stock price has been collapsing. It's not a good time to be working for BuzzFeed, to be honest. However, if you are someone working for Donald Trump's media acquisition company, well, let me just show you this. DWAC. Over the past 6 months, DWAC, which is Digital World Acquisition Corp, has exploded from $10 to a current price of $75, and now it just ticked up 93 cents. And where is BuzzFeed? Starting at $10 and now at $4. And 21 cents, down 57%. Ladies and gentlemen, if you invested in BuzzFeed, you have lost nearly 60% of your investment already. And if you invested in Donald Trump's Digital World Acquisition Corp, you are up 661%. Wow. So that means if you bought one share of Donald Trump's DWAC, you'd have made $65. Wow. If you bought BuzzFeed, you'd have lost $6. Isn't that something else? But let's read about what's going on and what's happening with BuzzFeed. Before we show you the direct ramifications of BuzzFeed's complete failure, let's read about what happened. This story is from December 6th, the New York Post. BuzzFeed shares sink in IPO after spooked investors rock SPAC merger. Shares of BuzzFeed plunged as much as 17% in their NASDAQ debut on Monday after its merger with a blank check company was hit by a flurry of investor withdrawals last week. New York-based BuzzFeed stock opened up 14% at $10.95, but reversed course to trade as low as $8, and this is back in December. By mid-afternoon, shares were down only 7%. The company was one of the 10 trending stocks on StockTwits. After shareholders redeemed a majority of their stake, BuzzFeed said last week it would receive only 6%, or nearly $16 million of the proceeds from the trust account of the blank check company. It's a company, 895th Avenue Partners. Special purpose acquisition companies typically sell shares at $10 a piece. Put the cash in a trust account and then search for a company to buy. Its shareholders can choose to redeem their shares in return for cash. Tightening scrutiny from the SEC and saturated demand have weighed on the SPAC market, which soared in popularity last year. BuzzFeed's deal is a barometer of investor interest in peers like Vox Media, which is reportedly considering a SPAC merger. Magnum Opus acquisition, the SPAC merging with Forbes, has been trading below its issue price of $10. This is just absolutely hilarious. BuzzFeed also secured $150 million through a convertible note financing. Basically, I could be wrong about this, but I think it's debt. Essentially they're like, it's a loan of, the company, which produces news, videos, and online quizzes, was founded in 2006 by Jonah Peretti, blah, blah, blah. Ladies and gentlemen, get woke, go broke once again. In 2016, the company was valued at $1.7 billion after Comcast owned NBC Universal Investment. BuzzFeed, which won a Pulitzer Prize in June, bought the news website Huffington Post last year and also acquired youth entertainment company Complex Networks in June this year. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. This is not just BuzzFeed spiraling out of control. It is also Huffington Post. It is also Complex. And I love this in the background. It says, there's a guy holding a sign, "Glad we didn't sell to Waystar." Well, don't hold your breath just yet, my friend. It's really crazy to see, isn't it? You've got, is that a T-shirt with Ben Smith? Is that Ben Smith? I can't tell. Huffington Post, Tasty Brands. My friends, BuzzFeed is in trouble and everything in between. Look, I wish no ill will, professionally, I suppose. I don't like to see companies fail or struggle because it happens to the best of us. BuzzFeed was once this roaring, popular, money-making machine and now it's spiraling out of control. And, when you grow too large, these things can happen. BuzzFeed will probably recoil, they'll retract, and then they'll find their path and maintain some kind of presence. Right now, TimCast.com is exploding. We're growing. But I guess I run my business differently than a lot of these companies. We're not going to take big investment. We're not going to try and grow faster than we can. A lot of these companies, they'll see growth and they'll be like, hey, look, we got all this money coming in. Let's take a big investment That way we can grow even faster, make more money quicker. But then a year or two goes by and it's like, you know, that debt we took on, we aren't actually able to make money off these projects. So we got a couple new shows over at TimCast.com, right? Obviously, there's this show, Tim Pool Daily Show. There's TimCast IRL. Two shows where I'm, you know, one of the core pieces of talent. Obviously, Tim Pool Daily Show is just me. TimCast IRL is a rotating group of individuals. But then we have Pop Culture Crisis with Brett Miracle. We have Tales from the Inverted World with Shane. And we are preparing some more shows, some conspiracy conversation shows, Chicken City. The thing is, as much as we absolutely could launch a ton of shows, I've stopped and said, okay, we've launched these new projects. They need to become sustainable. They're all making money. It's fantastic. And it's not bad. But right now they cost more money than they make. If the shows can never get to a point where they sustain themselves, then we either have a conversation about whether or not the shows can continue, whether or not we want to subsidize them because we like them. And we just need to determine that. If we get to a point where we're like, Tales from the Inverted World is awesome, we love it. We don't know if it'll ever make enough money to sustain itself, but we'll keep the project going because we think it's worth making. That's subsidy on our end. Once we get to that point in knowledge, we can say, okay, let's do a new show. There may come a point where we're like, guys, it's just not possible to maintain this show if people don't want it. If people don't spend money on it, we can't keep it going. Companies like BuzzFeed and Vox and these other digital media outlets decided to just take a bunch of investment to launch projects that ultimately didn't work. And now it's failing. They may retract back to a position where they can make money like they were when it was just BuzzFeed and listicles, but that's substantially less money, right? So I'll put it this way. For us, we're doing so well, I absolutely believe we could bring in a massive amount of investment, which would shock the media landscape. And then what? I'm like, just throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. And then in a year, we fire everybody. I ain't playing those games. I'm never a fan of that stuff. I don't live that way. I don't live on credit cards. I'm not playing that. Here's what's happening to BuzzFeed because they play dirty games. And you know what? Dirty games is my perspective. They play these games where they try to bring in money. And also, let's just be real. You want to talk about grifting? BuzzFeed is grifting, okay? Here's what Axios says. BuzzFeed is limiting hiring to only critical positions and will not be adding any new jobs unless there's a business case justification, the CEO said last week. BuzzFeed is under pressure to preserve cash after a high level of redemptions from SPAC investors ahead of its IPO merger. BuzzFeed raised only around $16 million of investor cash in its IPO alongside $150 million of debt. Oh. Ouch. The company also lowered revenue guidance for the full year in 2021, citing a slowdown to its retail business. Did you know that BuzzFeed sells like spatulas and products in Walmart? Man, I don't blame them. I mean, hey, if you can do it, you can do it. To be honest, it's pretty smart. BuzzFeed says if we're going to sell ads for things we own. I agree. We've done advertisements for Tales from the Inverted World. We have a book. It's invertedworldbook.com, I believe, and you can buy one. We own it. It's part of the company. So instead of buying ads from people who are like, hey, we'll pay you X to promote our product, we're like, let's just make our own stuff. We'll promote our own stuff. We're better off doing that. So BuzzFeed does that. They sell spatulas and, I don't know, whatever, measuring cups and things like that. And to be honest, we actually have a bunch of them. You ever see the tasty things at Walmart? That is owned by BuzzFeed. They say without growing its profit margins, the company won't as easily be able to afford future acquisitions, which Peretti has noted are a key part of the company's long-term growth vision. I'll tell you what's going to happen. We saw with Vice. Now, many of you know I worked for Vice, and they expanded. There was Vice.com, then they launched Vice News, which was like a subdomain of Vice.com, but then they had like Motherboard, and they had Broadly, I think it was called. They were launching all these websites. And the idea was people go to Vice for something specific. They'll go to Motherboard for something different. And so the people who like Motherboard might not like Vice. It actually makes sense, because I'll tell you this. We have pop culture news on the front page of TimCast.com. Some people might go there and be like, yo, I don't care about pop culture shows, but we have it there and it's in the mix. So they might prefer just to go to, Tim Pool or TimCast and look at the news we have there. And okay, well, news is different from, so you can go to the read section or you can go to the news section and you can read that specifically. The idea with a lot of these companies was separate the verticals so that someone who doesn't care about news will only get tech. Eventually, it didn't work. The problem was these websites could not sustain themselves. They didn't make enough money. So then they brought it all back into the fold. When BuzzFeed acquires these other companies like Huffington Post, how much you want to bet eventually they're going to be like, Huffington Post doesn't make enough money to sustain itself. And then Huffington Post becomes a footnote. It just becomes like a tag on an article. It ceases to exist. They're going to say, BuzzFeed was initially projecting around $95 million in revenue from the commerce sales for 2021. It's now projecting a high teens percentage increase in commerce sales year over year, as opposed to a 60% year over year due to the pandemic-related supply chain issues slumming in retail sales. Ladies and gentlemen, if there's one thing that Let's Go Brandon accomplished, and I mean Brandon himself, Joe Biden, it's that he has inadvertently destroyed BuzzFeed. Wow. That's crazy. Whatever, man. Supply chain disruption hurt BuzzFeed to the point where they're spiraling. Thanks to Joe Biden, you reap what you sow. The integration of complex networks is likely to result in the consolidation of two companies. Administrative functions. BuzzFeed named Complex Networks chief Christian Basler its new chief operating officer. Axios spoke with staffers who said a hiring slowdown caught them off guard, especially after months of the company touting ambitious growth plans. The hiring slowdown is meant to preserve cash. Some said it felt like another major signal the company's SPAC wasn't going well. It didn't track with anything else we've been told recently, one person said. It's unclear how long the hiring slowdown will last. BuzzFeed declined to comment. Most media companies saw their stocks decline, blah, blah, blah. Shut your rotten mouths, Axios, and don't play that game. You go to Donald Trump's DWAC, and it is through the roof, and has always been. In January, DWAC went up. This is amazing. It's huge, huge. Okay? Take a look at this story from Reuters. This is SPAC linked to Trump's venture outperforms others in sector. Now, DWAC isn't necessarily the same thing as BuzzFeed. I get it. I'm just trying to show you that when it comes to the populist movement, there's success. When it comes to whatever the leftist establishment is doing, they are spiraling. Yo, my friends, we're winning. I don't think Donald Trump is the end-all be-all. I don't think he's like the one savior or the God emperor or anything like that. But whatever this is, freedom, anti-establishment, it's working. And BuzzFeed's establishment garbage is failing. Reuters said shares of the blank check acquisition firm that agreed to merge with Donald Trump's social media venture have outperformed every other special purpose acquisition company, despite the regulatory risks facing the deal. That's right. And they don't list BuzzFeed here, but BuzzFeed is down. Digital World Acquisition Corp., which inked an $875 million deal in October to merge with Trump, TMTG, currently ranks as the best performing SPAC stock ever. This story is from January 24th. Okay, this is all happening now. Digital World's shares ended at $73 on Friday, way above their $10 initial public offering price. Man, I'm not much of a stock trader guy. You know, I like cryptocurrencies. I like investing in things that I'm indirectly involved in. But man, do I wish I just took a big chunk of money and bought into DWAC, because up 660%. Woo! In what? In only a few months. Wow, man. There was money to be made. Demand is high. Sorry, BuzzFeed, what's that? You're spiraling. Oof. Too bad. They say, this is despite TMTG not having rolled out its social media app yet and the regulatory risks facing the deal. Democratic U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren and SEC Commission Chairman Gary Gensler, what did they say last month? They said last month, or what they plan to, investigate the planned merger for potential violations of security laws around disclosure. Oh, please. Of course they would. The SEC has declined to comment on whether it will take any action. Digital World disclosed last month that it has fielded inquiries from the SEC and the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, FINRA, about providing details on their nature. The financial underperformance of most SPACs makes Digital World stock rally, driven by Trump supporters and retail investors, all the more notable. According to Jay Ritter, a professor at the University of Florida, SPACs on an average have underperformed against the broader market by 25%. If regulators let the deal go through, Digital World shareholders are all but certain to vote for it, given the stock's performance. Digital World expects to issue a proxy statement with details on the deal in February, laying the ground for the vote to be held in the following weeks, according to people familiar with the matter. Apple's App Store currently lists February 21st as the date that Trump's new social media app Truth Social will be available for download. Digital World CEO Patrick Orlando and other SPACs insiders paid $11.8 million to receive founder and placement shares in the SPAC that are now worth roughly $620 million. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Man. Wow. That's something to behold, you know? Absolutely something to behold. And look, I get it. Donald Trump's SPAC is a social media platform. Okay, it's different from BuzzFeed. It's not the same thing. I'm not trying to say that they are absolutely the same thing. But I just find it absolutely fascinating to see that if you were going to be investing in a company that people know about, that has been successful in the past, it's now dropped 57%. To be totally complete, 57.35%. BuzzFeed is down. And DWAC, 661%. From a financial perspective, if we were going to look to the wisdom of the crowd to predict where we are headed in the future, Donald Trump has a large and powerful movement behind him. It doesn't necessarily mean that the media landscape will absolutely favor Trump, the things he says, the Trump movement, populism, or anything like that. It's certainly a better hint. If you look at BuzzFeed and everything they've pushed, BuzzFeed is a centralized media landscape and woke leftism, and it's failing. Digital World Acquisition Corp, Trump's new platform, is a decentralized media platform of individuals posting. It's skyrocketing, and it's not woke. It's anti-woke. Now, maybe we'll see what happens. Perhaps it's all just big speculation. Who knows? Perhaps it is being driven by the fact that retail investors, Trump supporters, are pushing for this and won't back down because they want it. Nobody wants BuzzFeed, though. So it may not be anything to do to performance for DWAC. No, there's not even a product available yet. You've got BuzzFeed, the old guard. Not even that old, right? They've been around for a while now. They've succeeded in the past, and they're failing, and no one wants to be involved in that. And you've got Trump's platform, which doesn't even exist yet, and everyone's like, let me in the door. The wisdom of the crowd. It's not always correct, but the idea is that, you know, it's like ask the audience in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. That you'll see a tendency of the crowd to be correct in a lot of ways. Not always. Sometimes Ask the Audience fails because they get things wrong and there's misconceptions. But what it seems is the crowd is betting on Trump winning and BuzzFeed losing. And that is the point to drive home. When we look at these stories about Joe Rogan and they try and smear him and they lie about him, and now they're digging up everything he's ever said. Oh, this was so predictable. I don't know if it matters. There's a video someone posted, and it was like a compilation of Joe Rogan saying a racial slur over and over again. And they're like, just watch the thread. It's not out of context. It totally is out of context. Look, Joe has said stupid things. His podcast has been on for 10 years, and Joe said stupid things. A lot of people have said stupid things. And of course, they're going to try and smear him. Doesn't matter. Don't care. There was that race car driver who lost a sponsor because his dad in the 80s said the N-word. I kid you not. That's how insane and stupid everything got. But I think people finally snapped and said, I don't want to live this way. Leave me alone. I saw Ted Lieu earlier, and he was like, it's not hard to condemn Nazis, Ted Cruz. Just say it. And I'm just like, shut your mouth, you moron. No one cares anymore. We are so sick and tired of all of that virtue signaling garbage. Why won't you condemn this or say that? Shut up. I don't care about your opinion, you idiot. I just don't care anymore. You can only push so hard before people snap and say, shut your mouth. That's it. You know, they say, you know, there was a period where people were like, they didn't want to be called racist because nobody wanted to be racist. It was like someone accused you of that. And you're like, hey, man, I don't like those things. Don't call me that. Now it's just like, I literally don't care about your stupid garbage opinions. They're meaningless. They don't move the needle for any of us. And we're busy dealing with things that are more important. That sentiment, that anger, that tiredness, I think is reflected in what we're seeing with people telling BuzzFeed to shut up. You know, BuzzFeed ran this story, BuzzFeed News, where they claimed two black men fought to the death over a chicken sandwich, a fried chicken sandwich, and it was a fake story. It was overtly racist, and the editor-in-chief of BuzzFeed would not change the story. Well, it's kind of true. These people are scumbags. They call you racist. The real story was that some dude was waiting in line at the Popeyes, and another dude cut in line. They got into an argument. They went outside, and then one guy just stabbed the other guy. They weren't fighting over a chicken sandwich. They were fighting over some dude cutting someone else in line. And apparently the story is the guy who got cut, who died, he was the one who died. So the guy who got cut twice. The guy was in line. Some dude cuts in front of him. He says, "Hey, dude, don't cut in front of me." And the guy says, "Shut up." And then when they go outside, because they're arguing, the guy who cut in line pulled out a knife and stabbed the other guy. That's my understanding of the story. BuzzFeed reports it as they fought to the death over a fried chicken sandwich. Because BuzzFeed are scumbag pieces of trash who claim the high ground that they're not racist and they're racist. No, what happened was some dude was like, "Don't cut me," and the other guy killed him for it. Senseless violence. The race had nothing to do with it. The food had nothing to do with it. But you know what? Scumbags like BuzzFeed said, here's an opportunity to take a stereotype and run it. Yeah, because they're trash. Good. Glad to see them go. We'll see how it plays out. They might still exist as a company, but there it is, my friends. You can see it in the numbers. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCast. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.